Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for calling this very important hearing today. Fukushima reminded us of the devastating effects of a nuclear reactor meltdown. Radiation from the accident was detected over 1,000 miles away. Land contamination continues to keep tens of thousands of people from returning to their homes, and cleanup cost estimates continue to rise, and industry admitted that it will cost well over $100 billion. Meanwhile, in the United States, we have packed so much radioactive waste into spent fuel pools that even NRC studies conclude that spent fuel fires could spread as much contamination as a meltdown of an operating reactor. Throughout the United States, many pools, including the one at the Pilgrim nuclear power plant, are dangerously overcrowded. The solution to this is simple. Take the waste out of the pools and put it into safer dry cask storage. That is why I recently introduced the Dry Cask Storage Act, which gives plants 7 years to remove all the waste that can be removed from the pool and put it into safer dry cask storage, provides funding to help offset the cost, and increases the size of emergency planning zones around plants that choose not to remove the waste from their pools. Madam Chair, is it true that removing waste from the pool and putting it into dry cask storage reduces the amount of radioactivity that could potentially be released if a spent fuel fire were to occur?
Operating reactors need both pools. Well, they need, let me just say, operating reactors need pools because when they discharge their fuel, it's very hot and it needs the water circulation to keep it cool. So you need a spent fuel pool. When the spent fuel is aged, at least 5 years, right now in the United States, it can be then transferred to a dry cask. And those dry casks are safe, they're passive systems. The spent fuel pools are active systems and require active circulation of water.
Okay, so didn't the NRC studies show that even at decommissioned reactors, it was never possible to rule out the possibility of a spent fuel fire?
I think there are a variety of studies out there, and I could take that for the record because I myself would like to see more analysis of a number of these issues.
Well, are any of you familiar with any NRC studies that show that there could, in fact, be a fire? Are any of you familiar with that at all?
Yes, Senator, there could be a fire. The question is, how likely is it? The NRC studies have shown that it's extremely unlikely. That's what the studies say.
So the Commission recently voted to allow plants to continue to overfill these pools for as long as they wish to do so. So each of you is saying is that it's highly unlikely that there will be a fire, and therefore there is no need to move towards dry cask storage. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying, Mr. Apostolakis?
Well, there were 4 main inputs that I considered in my vote. The detailed staff analysis, which argued that way. The Advisory Committee on Reactor Safeguards independent experts agreed with the staff. The historical record that showed that the spent fuel pools withstood very severe earthquakes beyond design basis. There was a statement by Dr. Thompson, who raised a lot of issues and questions, and there was a distinguished member of the Advisory Committee that rebutted all these issues that he raised. So all the evidence pointed to the extremely low likelihood of a fire there.
Okay, so let me just read to you from the NRC's own statements. It says, an SFP fire could have health effects comparable to those of a severe reactor accident. Large seismic events that fail the SFP are the dominant contributor to causing an SFP fire. So where there are earthquake zones, Southern California is an example, but they're all over the country. How do you deal with that in terms of your own agency's conclusion with regard to the danger of a fire that could become catastrophic? Madam Chair.
The commission has voted on this issue, and the commission decided that this issue needed no further study.
No, and I appreciate that, okay? But again, we just had Fukushima. We know that many of the nuclear power plants in our country are built on or near earthquake faults, and we have the commission's actual conclusion here. I understand the industry does not want to spend the money. I understand that the industry doesn't want to have to absorb this kind of a cost, but again, I'm just dealing here with your own agency's conclusion about the danger that exists.
Senator, the seismic reevaluation project will also look at the spent fuel pools again.
Yeah, what is the timeline for that?
It's in progress. I don't know when they end like.
For the top priority group of plants, their seismic probabilistic risk assessments will be completed by 2017.
Okay.
Well, the whole, concept of probabilistic risk assessment is one that is very long and obviously goes back to the late 70s and early 80s, with assessments made even then with regard to the probability of an accident and the need to build in proper protections. So PRA is the longstanding standard, and it just seems to me almost irresponsible that we're going to wait until 2017 to complete that kind of a study, knowing the danger that exists the longer that decommissioned plants sit there with these spent fuel rods in place. Have you implemented any permanent seismic safety measures? And are you planning to do that before 2017?
Yes. What we've done, there's been a seismic hazard reanalysis that we ordered as a result of lessons learned from Fukushima. Actually, it was already in progress before the Fukushima accident, but we've moved it up. And what we've done is we're trying to be proactive.
But
based on
I understand you've done the
newer
analysis. You've done the analysis. Have you put anything in place in order to ensure there are safeguards there?
Yes, certainly. The plants are built with a significant amount of margin. Now, the analysis has analyzed the hazard. What we're trying to now understand with the probabilistic risk assessments is the capacity of the plants to withstand that reanalyzed hazard.
So you haven't put any new standards on a permanent basis in place since Fukushima? None.
This is
And
site-specific.
that is, for me, still, unforgivable. We know what can happen. We know what the consequences are. We saw what happened in 3 Mile Island that warned us about the potential consequences of a reactor meltdown years before Chernobyl and Fukushima. And now experts have given us clear warnings that a spent fuel pool fire could actually be worse than a reactor meltdown. With that much at stake, I think the Commission's vote not to heed these warnings was simply irresponsible.
Senator, can I just clarify a point? In 2012, we requested the plants to do seismic and flooding hazard walkdowns, and so the plant operators had to go through the plants, make sure that all the bolts were tightened, that there weren't hazards
And I appreciate
presented.
that. That's
and
all-
they
that-
completed that.
That's a study. That's a
No,
study.
it wasn't a study. They actually walked through the plants and made sure that everything was as they were supposed to be, that they met their licensing basis for their seismic hazards. And in some cases, they found small problems. They've corrected them, or they're in the process of
Right,
correcting.
but those are pre-Fukushima standards, and you have not promulgated any post-Fukushima standards thus far. They are still, in many instances, not in compliance with pre-Fukushima. Chairman McFarland, the Department of Justice recently indicted 5 members of the Chinese military on charges of hacking into U.S. companies' systems. According to the indictment, the Chinese efforts included the thefts of nuclear reactor trade secrets from Westinghouse. These thefts started in May of 2010 and lasted until at least January of 2011. At the very same time that those thefts occurred, Westinghouse was hosting a job shadow program that placed dozens of Chinese personnel at U.S. nuclear reactors for months during the identical time frame in which the alleged thefts occurred. This job shadow program was approved by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. I recently wrote you a letter asking for more information on this program. I look forward to your response. Chairman McFarland, did any of the Chinese nationals who were stationed at American nuclear reactors have unescorted access to the facilities?
Senator, this job shadow program was a private sector activity. It was not under the control of the NRC. The NRC ensured that its security regulations were followed during this time, and I respectfully ask you to refer all questions, other questions on this topic, to the Justice Department.
Well, let me ask you this. Would NRC rules, regulations allow unescorted Chinese nationals to go through private nuclear power plants? Would
Again,
your regulations allow that to occur, that the Chinese would be unescorted and walking through domestic nuclear power plants?
I can tell you that our regulations, our security regulations were followed, but I do request
But do
that
those
you refer...
I'm asking, do those regulations allow for Chinese nationals to walk through our nuclear power plants unescorted? That's
No,
my question.
Senator, they're not allowed to do that.
They are not allowed
No.
to do that. Then how could it have happened then that they were walking through our power plants, especially post 9/11 and post?
Senator, we're in the process of responding to your letter, and I do request that you direct your further questions to the Department of Justice.
Well, no, I appreciate that. I'm just trying to get at the heart here of what you allow and then what happened, okay? And I'm getting a little bit of, I think, a mixed message here. One, you're saying, Mr. Apostolakis, that they would not be permitted under your regulations.
That is my understanding, Senator, yes.
Okay, so how could they possibly gain access, unescorted, Chinese nationals into nuclear power plants, especially post 9/11, with these additional security provisions, many of them things that I'm the author of, with regard to access to our nuclear power plants?
I don't know, Senator.
You do not know. Do you know?
We're in the process of responding to your letter, and again, I ask that you refer all further questions to the Department of Justice on this topic.
Okay, and I will just say this in conclusion, that the NRC claims to foster a safety-conscious work environment where, and I quote, personnel feel free to raise safety concerns without fear of retaliation, intimidation, harassment, or discrimination. In the past year, my office has heard from an increasing number of whistleblowers from many different offices at NRC. These people are all serious, dedicated individuals who are calling my staff because they feel that they are not being heard by their own managers and colleagues. They feel that when they step forward to report safety, security, or other problems, they are systematically retaliated against. I have raised this concern many times with you. I am holding a report written by the NRC, but not yet publicly released, that actually surveyed those who have attempted to use NRC's formal processes for resolving policy disagreements. A staggering 75% of those who used them said that they received a poor performance appraisal after they raised their whistleblower concerns. Almost 2/3 of them said they were excluded from work activities by their management. 25% were passed over for promotions. 25% were even verbally abused by their colleagues and their supervisors. Those results are shameful, and I ask that portions of this report be entered into the record and request your formal written response for what you plan to do to fix these problems.
Without objection, so ordered.
And I thank you, and I will just say that I began chairing a committee overseeing the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in 1981. I had a hearing on site at San Onofre in 1983 on site, and this just continues. This whole pattern just continues at the agency, and it is one that it's troubling because, especially post-Fukushima, you know, it's very important for this culture to change, and I'm just afraid that it has not. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator.